Hi. A few years ago, some colleagues and I published a paper about 5 frequently fatal freshman fantasies. And these are ideas that help us understand how students need to grow and mature in their thinking about college level courses in order to succeed. The first one of the 5 frequently fatal fantasies we call the fantasy of the miracle finish. And this is the idea that somehow a student can relax and be less than diligent for most of the semester, not doing their homework, not trying to master the learning objectives in a wholehearted way, and somehow in the last couple weeks of the semester, in the run-up to the final exam, work really hard, apply themselves wholeheartedly, but only for a short period of time near the end, and somehow end up conquering the material and acing the final exam and coming out with a good result. And this is really a bad idea because mathematics and mathematics-based courses are really like skills. It's like quantitative reasoning and quantitative problem solving are like acquiring skills. And you could no more succeed in working real hard the last week or two in a math or physics or engineering course than you could suddenly trying to lose 20 pounds the last couple of weeks before a fitness test, or suddenly trying to beginning to train for a marathon in the last couple of weeks before the sporting event. It's not going to work that way. The second fantasy is the fantasy of the soft-hearted professor. And this is the idea that most students see themselves as good people. Most students develop a good relationship with the professor, and they start to think to themselves, well, the professor's a nice guy. And they begin to say to themselves, or at least think in the back of their minds, that maybe the learning objectives and the assessment methods and the grading policies that are outlined in the course letter and the syllabus aren't really going to be applied to me. And somehow, because the professor likes me, I'm going to get a good grade in the class. And students need to realize that in classes at the Air Force Academy, the grading policies outlined in the course letter and the syllabi are going to be adhered to, and your grade is going to be the result of simply the numerical average of the numbers you've earned as explained in the course letter. The third frequently fatal freshman fantasy is that college is a simple extension of high school. In other words, you're thinking that you can succeed using the same kinds of habits and preparation that you did in high school. And most people at the Air Force Academy, most cadets, are very smart, very capable. They cruise through high school with very little preparation outside of class, and they earn mostly A's and B's. And the idea that that same approach is going to succeed here is simply wrong. At the Air Force Academy, most 3-hour classes meet 40 times, and we are depending on the cadet to spend an hour outside of class in preparation, doing homework problems, doing readings, working extra problems in preparation for graded events, preparing reports, this kind of thing. We are expecting cadets to spend about 2 class hours outside of class for each class hour. And those who think they're going to just come to class and pay attention and do a subset of the homework and succeed are laboring under the third fantasy that is just an extension of high school. The fourth frequently fatal freshman fantasy is that weak areas won't be tested. And this is the idea that when you come to an area or you recognize maybe a problem on the homework or a subject that's talked about in class and you realize this is not your strongest area, you begin to say to yourself, this probably won't be on the test. You begin to work a little harder at the things that you're already good at and avoid the areas where you need more work to really develop that proficiency and that mastery. For example, in physics, usually the subject of avoidance has to do with vectors and adding vectors and dot products and this kind of thing. In most early math classes, students like to become comfortable with the mechanical manipulations. Oh, well, give me an algebra problem to solve for x and I'll solve for x. Or give me a function and I'll take the derivative of it. And they avoid things like the word problems, the problems that require a process and a setup and a little more challenge to solve. The fifth frequently fatal freshman fantasy is that passing is more important than learning. And this is the idea that if one can get out of the course with a B or a C on their transcript, whatever their grade goal happens to be, that somehow that's the more important thing as opposed to mastering the material. And the students need to understand that the material in the early mathematics courses at the Air Force Academy are repeated and they're used over and over and over again. In other words, the algebra and the trigonometry skills in the early math courses are used in calculus and physics and engineering and chemistry and later engineering and a little more engineering and a little more engineering. So mastery of the material really is the most important things. So we want to grow past our high school habits. If we're laboring under some of these well-intentioned perhaps but mistaken ideas, we need to mature in our thinking and approach things with a frame of mind that's going to bring success here at the Air Force Academy.